Hello, everybody. This video is going to be I'm going to go over the week 1 assessment 1. And I couldn't find really an easy way to show y'all examples using Zoom. So for number 1, I'm not going to give the answer, but for 2 and 3, I kind of have to, so I can go over this with you guys. More than likely, we will have other questions like this later down the road. So at least this will give you a review for, if we have questions like this in the future. Because really what we're doing right now is a lot of review, not any new stuff. Okay, so again, I'm doing week 1 and I'm kind of going over the assessment 1 material. So right now we're going to look at, I'm going to actually start with question number 3. That way I can switch to the whiteboard here in just a minute. So for question number 3, we were given systems of equations. For those of y'all that got the TI Inspire, remember that you can graph these points on that calculator, and it should have showed you, where your lines were, and you should have been able to graph those easily if you're using a calculator. However, I know some people are struggling with getting the calculator, so this is the way. Before we had all these fancy calculators, we would do this. What you have to remember is you have 2 equations, and that represents these 2 lines. Well, how do I identify the lines? Well, remember that this is the same thing as y equals mx plus b, or it can be minus as well. So it's a linear format, and that's why they're lines. And for m, remember that is the slope. For b, which is our -2, that is our y-intercept. So if I come over here, and I said that you always want to use your y-intercept as your starting point. So that would be our b. And our y-axis is running up and down like this, right here. So I'm going to go to -2 on my y-axis. Here's 0, and then we go down the negatives. There's -2. So that does line up. That's correct. And then my slope is -4. And remember, that's rise over run. Well, this isn't in a fraction form, but remember, you can put anything over 1. So think of this as -4 over 1. So if I come over here, I start at -2, my y-intercept, the b, and now I'm going to use m, which is -4, for my slope to go to other dots on the line. Since it's negative, this is a negative slope. Remember, we read graphs left to right, and if you have a little man over here on the yellow line, he would be walking down the hill. So that makes sense too, because that's a negative slope. So my slope is -4, or -4 over 1. So I'm going to start at -2, my y-intercept, and I'm just going to go, remember we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the right 1. So that makes sense. If I go back and I do the opposite direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1, that makes sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. There's another dot. That's actually your solution right here, is where those 2 lines intersect. And then if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1, we have another dot there. So this is the yellow line. So this is correct, the yellow line that we just graphed. If I go down here and I start looking for my starting point, my y-intercept, my b, that's at -3. Well, if I look at the line and I go 1 to -3, there is no y-intercept there. So this is the mistake they made. They did +3 as their y-intercept instead of down here at -3. So that was their first mistake. So then you could have drawn this on paper. You could have, just kind of counted on your screen. Everybody's a little different, so you just got to pick the way that works for you. Right now, I can't really draw it out, so I'm going to use my little arrow to kind of map this out. So you have to pretend that there's a dot right here at -3. My slope is -3 or -3/1. And I already know that they're not going to intersect down here. They're going to intersect somewhere up here. So I'm going to go to -3, which is my starting point, and I'm going to use my slope again. And instead of going down 3, oh, you know what? I lied earlier. I'm sorry. Getting used to this. So forget what I said. This blue line right here is incorrect. So they probably will cross down here. So again, I'm going to go to -3. And if I go down 3, because we're doing a negative slope, 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1, notice how there's already a yellow dot there. So this is where that blue line should have started here. And then if you made another dot right here, it should have overlapped. They should have crossed right here. And the X and the line should be right around here. Let's see if I can do this. It's pretty slim. They're really close together. So again, let me go over that one more time. So this blue line is incorrect. So you kind of have to forget about it. You're just looking at the yellow line, the correct line. So if you cover it up with your hand or whatever you need to do to kind of visualize that, or again, you can draw it. You could draw the yellow line first and then draw your other line next. So again, we start at -3. That should have been where our starting point was, not here. Then my slope was -3/1. So I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and over 1. And there's where the solution is. The solution is where the two lines cross. So this is an incorrect solution. It should be down here where that yellow dot is. And that point, remember, when we write points, it's X, Y. So I got to go along my X and then go along my Y. I always start at my 0 when I'm plotting points or doing coordinate points. So this point right here, the coordinate point is +1, and then go down to -6. So that should have been your solution, +1, -6. So you kind of have to, you know, use your brain, visualize it. We also provided some notes on that. You could use TI calculator. But remember, even if you don't have the calculator, we taught everybody how to graph this by hand. I believe I also put a video, and I'm trying to tie the lessons with the questions. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And if you go to the video, it shows you the video of how to graph these equations. I have it paused right now, but there's lots of resources that y'all can use, but you just got to use those to answer those questions. Let me switch over here and get the whiteboard out. And I'm going to switch over real quick. Whoops. See if I can, yeah, there we go. All right. All right, so we did number 3 already. And remember, we had 3 questions that were asked. A lot of people just kept putting the solution or it's the blue line. Guys, you've got to read and answer all the questions. So it was blue. Line is incorrect. Why is it incorrect? The y-intercept was -3, not +3. And then the other part of the question was, what was the solution? And that was 1, -6. So you should have had all 3 of these answers down when you submitted. If you submit after today, we'll still take it, we'll give you credit, but the highest you can get is a 70. Okay, just stating that right now. I don't think I said that earlier. But if you still submit your form, we'll take credit. That shows me that you looked at this video, you took notes, and you're at least trying now. So just a little note, you're not going to get a full credit for that, but after this date, since I'm posting this video, but y'all have had about, what, 3 weeks now? So, I'm trying to help out, but come on, guys. All right. Let me go back here. I'm going to start with number 1 again. So I'm shooting back to number 1. And this was just a solving inequalities. I'm not going to do the one that was on the assessment, but I'm going to do a couple of examples. And that should, if you write down the actual question and then follow my example, I'm doing it exactly the way that you need to do it. And this is that one. Number 1 was which one, where was it the error? Was it in step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4? So I also posted videos, and this equation is from the video. I just kind of added to it. So we have something like, and remember, this isn't the question that's on the assessment. You have a different question, but if you write down that question and then follow along with this video, it's going to be the exact same type of problem. Just the numbers are different. All right, and this is also why I put 2 videos, where the first video talked about distribution, which is what you have to do first. The second part was just solving. So remember PEMDAS, we have parentheses. That should always show you that you got to start with the parentheses. And that means that we have to distribute, because there's that number in front, 4. So we have to distribute that 4 to that x and that 5. The thing parentheses means is to multiply. So I'm just going to rewrite 2x plus 12, because we're not working with that right now. And we're multiplying here. Well, miss, there's no number in front of the x. Technically there is. If you remember, you can always put a little 1 there. So 4 times 1 is 4, and then it's 4x. You keep the x. It's like its little buddy. Then you go 4 times positive 5. 4 times 5 is positive 20. And I believe that was the step 1. So I just did step 1. So you would have gone and looked back at step 1 and seen, did they do it correctly? Did they multiply? If they did, then you just move on. If they didn't multiply correctly, that was the error. And you would have said they didn't distribute. And that was another question that people were not answering all the questions. They were just giving us x equals or, whatever. And we asked, where was the mistake? I don't know, step 3, step 4, whatever step it was. And then what mistake did they make? If it's in this case, they didn't distribute. If your answer is different from what their answer was, they didn't distribute or they didn't multiply correctly. And then the final answer was where we're going to get to, what is x? What is the answer? So let's keep going. So now I need to get all my x's on one side of the equal sign and my regular numbers on the other side of the equal sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my x's first. And I like to move my smaller x's first, but you kind of have to pay attention to what they're doing in the problem to see which one they moved first to see if it's correct. But it shouldn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and move the 2x. And since this is a positive 2, I have to subtract the 2 to get rid of it on this side. Whatever I do to that side, I have to do to the other side. And I'm not doing it under the 20 because the 20 doesn't have an x. So they don't match. I can't put it with that. I have to put it under the 4x because those match. They have a number with an x. So this went away right here. I'm going to bring down my 12. 4 minus 2 is positive 2x. The buddy x stays with them. And then I'm just going to bring down that 20. All right, still, I don't have all my x's on one side and all my numbers on another side. If I try to move the 12 over, that won't work because you have nothing left on that side if you do that. And then you're just stuck with nothing on this side. It's blank equals, you can't do that. All right, so that's why we're not doing that. All right, so we have 12. That's why you have to move the 20. You can't move the 2x either because there's no x with that 12. They don't match. But this is just a number by itself. So I'm going to move that, and then I'm going to move it over here under the 12. So they all have to match when you do that. So this is going to go away over here. 12 minus 20 is -8. And then I just brought down my 2x. All right, now I have my x's on one side and my regular number on another. This is that last step. And I'm doing, if y'all remember, DCID. Some of y'all remember that. Remember that that last step is to divide. So I want the x by itself, so I need to get rid of that 2. The way I'm going to do that is by dividing. So I'm going to divide by 2 on this side. If I divide by 2 on this side, I have to do it to the other side of the equal sign. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and technically you don't need to write 1. You can just leave it as x. -8 divided by 2 is -4. And I don't like the x on that side, so it can be written like that, or either way is fine. Okay? So again, go back, rewrite the question that's on your assessment, then come back to this video and follow step by step. If you do what I'm doing, you should be able to figure it out pretty quick. So that is number 1. Number 2 is very similar, except instead of an equal sign, they're using an inequality. For me, this takes a while, this thing. And number 2, I'm actually going to go through because we had a lot of people just not doing well on number 2, even though it's basically the same thing, except instead of an equal sign, you have that inequality. Remember, the inequalities is just vocabulary. That just means a little Pac-Mans. But we say inequality because we're in high school now. So number 2 is the inequality question. We had 3x minus 13 is less than 7x plus 15. All right, so same thing. Here we have no parentheses, so we don't need to distribute anything. We're done with that. We don't have any like terms on the same side of the inequality. This 3 is separated by that inequality with that 7, so you cannot combine them. So now what we're going to do is we're going to isolate the variable. That just means we're getting the x's on one side and the numbers on the other side. All right, so this one was written a little bit weird. When I do my math, when I'm moving numbers around, I do it underneath. But on this question, they had the numbers side by side. Don't get caught up in that. It's still the same kind of problem. Because if I'm going to move the 13 over to this side, I still have to add it over. Because you have to do the opposite of what's happening. So the opposite of -13 is +13. Whatever I do to this side, I have to do to this side. All right. On your problem, I think they wrote it like that's still the same thing, isn't it? It's still 15 plus 13, and it's still -13 plus 13, and you would have just crossed it out. just like I'm going to cross it out up here. Still the same thing, they just wrote it in a different way. Okay, so don't get caught up when they do stuff like that. I know it's a little weird. I don't do my math like that either, but it's still the kind of same way. All right, so we got rid of this. I'm going to bring down 3x. I'm going to bring down my inequality, my 7x. 15 plus 13 is 28, positive. I'm still trying to isolate my variable. I'm trying to get x's on one side, the number on the other side by itself. So let's move the 7. So same thing, we're going to do 7x minus 7x. Again, they did it weird on your paper where they just wrote it side by side. But that's okay, I think it would look like this. It's still the same thing. Just cross it out over here. And if you need, this is why I'm big on just get a piece of paper out, do it your own way, it's fine. All right. So 7 minus 7 cancels out. 3 minus 7 is negative 4x. I drop down my inequality, and then I have a 28. Now I have my x's on one side and my plain number on this side. So that's the goal. Remember that last step is to divide. Once you've isolated everything, you can then divide. So I always divide by what's in front of the x. So that's a negative 4, and this is the negative 4. This is where everybody was making their mistake. They know, here I'm gonna go ahead and put x. They know that 28 divided by negative 4 is negative 7. But remember what happens when you divide by a negative and there's an inequality. You have that negative and there's an inequality. That sign has to flip. You have to flip the sign. So this would be x is greater than negative 7. And there's your answer. That was everybody was pretty good about getting down to this point, but then they would forget to flip their sign. If you're dividing by a negative, flip that sign. So your answer should have been 3 parts again. And I can't remember what step it was that they messed up in this. I think it was step 4 because they didn't flip their sign. So where did they mess up? Step 4. Why did they mess up? They didn't flip the sign. They didn't flip the sign. Okay? Or whatever it was. It was the other way. And then, ooh, that's ugly. They didn't flip the inequality. So step 4, they didn't flip the inequality. And then what's the correct answer? X is greater than negative 7. All right, so this was on your assessment. Again, if you turn in something after today, we'll still give you credit because that shows that you're at least looking at these videos and you're getting, if you didn't understand how to do it, you're getting what you need. But I can't give you full credit because I gave you answers and it's been 3 weeks later, okay? But that's fine. It'll still be a completed grade and you'll get the credit for attempting. And that's really all that we're asking you guys to do is just try. And that goes, just as we're ending here, that's just a side note. We still are in school. It is not optional. This is going to give you, as long as you're going through the motions, you're attempting, you're communicating with your teachers, and you're trying it out, you'll get the credit you need. But if you absolutely don't do anything for your classes, you run the risk of not gaining credit. Please do not do that to yourself, because that means when we do come back to school next year, you're going to be sitting in Algebra 1 or whatever class you didn't do while we were in this weird COVID-19 pandemic. So it is mandatory. You can work at your own pace. We may return things to you. If we return it to you, look at the feedback, ask questions. I am always offering Zoom one-on-one. So if you need to do that, just let me know. I don't know what you need unless you tell me. That is all for today. So I hope y'all have a good weekend. I will be posting the week 2 here shortly. But I hope everybody has a great day, and I'll see you later.